Welcome back to PoPCast. In today's episode, Whitney and I are joined by children's book author Cheryl Olsten. Cheryl is the author of several picture books, including one being enjoyed by grammarians and educators, Punctuation to the Rescue. It's a story where the punctuation marks themselves are the characters, complete with personalities, frustrations, and an adventure that takes them to a place called the Island of Chaos, where words run wild without any punctuation at all. In this episode, Cheryl shares the story behind the book, how she brought these characters to life, and why she believes making grammar fun is so important for young writers. So let's get into it.
Thank you, Travis and Whitney. I really appreciate you having me on PopCast. And by the way, I really like the name PopCast. It has a really nice, fun sound to it. It's a feel-good name.
Cheryl, before we dig into your work a little bit more, we were introduced to you as a children's book author, but we just wanted to get to know you a little bit and allow you to share some of your background with the audience as far as how you got into that place. You had founded New Jersey Life magazine before turning to children's books. Talk us through that world and your transition to writing children's books. We would love to hear all about that.
Sure, I'd love to start there. First of all, I'm an extremely visual person. I've been photographing forever. I'm originally from New York. I lived in New York. I went to Syracuse University and studied visual communications. I went to the School of Visual Arts and studied visual communications. So that's always been in my DNA, I guess I would say. And magazine journalism was always very interesting to me. I moved to Pennsylvania. So I got married here and left New York. And after a couple of years, I really missed that whole side of being in New York where I was able to work and go to school. And I got a part-time job photographing for a magazine in New Jersey. And they would send me out all over New Jersey. And of course, being from New York, you have a completely different idea of what New Jersey is. So I discovered the other side of New Jersey, and it's gorgeous. If one doesn't know New Jersey, there's some amazing places in New Jersey. And I decided that I wanted to show the other face of the Garden State. And so I was introduced to somebody in New York who was in magazine publishing, and he got me started. He introduced me to a great graphic designer. We did everything you need to do to get the logo, the name, the look, the feel of the whole book. He got me on the newsstands. He got me staffed up, the whole thing. I was ready to run. So I did New Jersey Life for 12 to 14 years, and I loved every bit of it. Like anything, it has a lot of challenges, but I learned a lot. I had some really good editors on staff, and because we used a lot of editors from New York, I got to listen to different writing styles. The Lifestyle magazine covers a number of different things. So you're exposed to different writing styles, which was really beneficial. I learned a lot through that, and I learned a lot through how to publish a magazine, which is really important. And that actually carried over into book publishing, which as an indie author, it's not for the faint of heart. I have to be very honest. For me, children's picture books was perfect. I can't say that as a child I was read to, which was unfortunate. Grew up with the classics, the little golden books I loved, Black Beauty and Snow White and Cinderella. I loved all those books, and I was in that world. And so that style of writing really, or voice, really influenced my voice. But getting back to publishing the magazine, it was a great experience, and learning how to publish was super. Picking the paper, being on press, dealing with distributors, dealing with newsstands. So you're not dealing with newsstands, but now as an indie author, you're dealing with distributors, and you're dealing with printers and you're dealing with all the things that go with it. My first book, Big Wishes for Little Feet, I didn't know any editors, quite frankly, here in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. I did know one, though. I only knew that she wrote cookbooks, but she was a great person. I told her about my idea, and she said, I can definitely help you. And she helped me edit Big Wishes for Little Feet. And then I came to know that she actually had a company that worked with authors, emerging authors, current authors, and that was super helpful. She said, writing is only part of it. There's the whole back end of it. And that's
Mm.
the really difficult part. And you can't ignore the back end of it. And the more that you get into it, there's obviously the social media part, which we all know is a real drain on time. But there's
Sure.
also finding the distributor and finding and getting to Ingram, because I did not want to do the print on demand. I wanted to do the actual runs. I wanted to do offset printing because I'm very particular, having come from the magazine background, on how my book is going to look.
Awesome. Let's talk about Punctuation to the Rescue a little bit more then. So I have the book sitting in my hand, super cute. It's a great little story, and just the play on the punctuation marks as the characters and how they talk within their own character. Will you just talk a little bit about just their personalities and how did you just land on making them the characters? Where did that kind of come from?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Ideas come from different places. Sometimes you see something that sparks an idea. A lot of things usually come from within. It comes from your own experiences in life. I think the first notion I got was people started using exclamation points, like 5 exclamation points after the word hi. Why can't there just one exclamation point work? Why does it have to be 5? All of a sudden, that whole feeling of this exclamation mark weighed on my mind. And
Mm.
the idea of doing a story with the 4 marks, just the 4 simple marks, came to be. Like anything, you do all your research, and I did lots of research into punctuation, like way back to cave writing. I wrote my draft and I showed it to one of the editors, and she really liked the idea. I started to flush it out and I sent it back to her, and she said, this is great, but you need to be exclamation mark, and you need to be comma,
Mm.
and you need to be question mark, and you need to be period. And so the more I got to really get into the minds and the personalities of these 4 marks, I don't know, they started to become friends. They were like my buddies now. You just get this, like with any of the characters, I think, in your story that you develop, you're bringing them to life. I've become very attached to those 4 marks. And for me, I really feel that learning with pictures or learning in a fun way, I think is so much easier, especially if you have a subject that young children might not grasp onto. I've had great success with Punctuation to the Rescue as far as feedback from educators, from librarians, from reviewers. It's been great. And I just feel that I've really gotten to know these punctuation marks. They have these great personalities, and actually I've learned how to use comma more than I ever did before. Period, because I've always had run-on sentences and I use my
Oh,
kids better
interesting.
now.
It's so much fun to read. And just for our listeners who haven't read the book yet, before punctuation marks decide they need a vacation, so they head out, but they end up getting into a little bit of trouble in the open
Yeah.
sea. And they end up on the island of chaos. This is just where words run wild without punctuation marks, which we see all the time in our own students' writing. Walk us through that setting and what
Mhm.
you were hoping the readers would take away from that part of the story, being on that island of chaos.
Yeah, specifically, it started with the punctuation marks being just so frustrated because they're just underappreciated and overused. And so they decide to leave. Through a series of mishaps, they go off course. They were heading to another island, and they didn't make it there, and they end up on this island of chaos. And they meet Pilcrow. Not a lot of people know
I
what
love.
Pilcrow is
Yeah.
anymore, but there were some reviewers and educators that were really happy to see that brought up. And I thought that it would be fun to add a punctuation mark that's no longer used.
And so for some of our younger listeners, go ahead and tell us about that mark, because I loved it, because I remember that mark very well.
So a Pilcrow is just that mark. It's like a P, but it's a double the P. And
Line
this
through it.
means
Yeah.
to start a new paragraph. You're starting a new paragraph. It's really as simple as that. And why it was used so much back in the day, I'm not sure, but it was used a lot.
I had a high school English teacher that loved to use it on all of my papers. I remember that mark very well in red.
Okay, that's funny. So Pilcrow beseeched the four marks to help him get order on the island of chaos, where these words are just out of control. They have no punctuation. The punctuation marks decide that they need to stay and they need to help. They stay and they help get order on the island of chaos, and they bring meaning to their sentences and they bring meaning to their world. And the sentences and Pilcrow are very grateful for them staying and helping and showing them what they need to do. I will have to say the book designer on that kind of ran away with what happened on the island of chaos as far as what the illustrations would look like. I think it got a little chaotic, and maybe she felt that on the island of chaos it should get a little chaotic, but that's a whole nother thing working with a book
Sure.
designer.
I really enjoyed it, and just thinking about our philosophy with teaching grammar and conventions. And we talk about the punctuation and how that does bring meaning to our writing and
Great one.
effect. And so when I read this, I was just excited because the message behind it is everything that we bring forth in our teaching of grammar as well. So thank you for that.
I love the idea of using pictures and words, obviously. And I just felt that actually punctuation to the rescue was me saying, I need to step outside my comfort zone in how I write and see if I can do something completely different. So for me, it was a challenge. And I was actually surprised that I was able to come up with this other voice, because it's typically not my voice, but I really like the voice that came out in Punctuation to the Rescue. And I really like the characters that they've become, and I'm so attached to them.
I love it. And just one more thing about that punctuation to the rescue is at the end, we learn of a new symbol called the love point. So can you tell us just a little bit about your inspiration and thinking around this love point?
So I guess two things. The love point was a mark amongst a couple of other marks that was created a long time ago, but never saw the light of day. But actually, if you look on your emojis, there is a love point. Because it's not really something that people use here again, like the Pilcrow, I thought it would be nice to add something that was developed but not used. I was going to go and put some emojis into the punctuation because that's a new way for everybody communicating, but I decided not to go down that route. With Pilcrow giving the punctuation marks this love point and showing their appreciation was really important to the punctuation marks to let them know how much they're appreciated.
Oh, I love it. Love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful story, and it definitely captured the idea of infusing joy and fun into learning.
Exactly.
Ultimately, I think the readers are taking away those purposes behind the punctuation, but to do it in a way that's enjoyable, yeah, you definitely hit the mark on that.
I do it consciously more so now than I have years ago when I'm reading, and I read a lot. I really look at the writer's style and I look to see how they're using their punctuation and how it really makes a difference when I'm reading the story, and how it's actually giving more meaning to how they're writing. It makes such a huge difference, and I think that until kids realize when they're writing, and it's hard, I think, for children to grasp that when they're writing, if they use some punctuation properly, it makes a huge difference in how they're conveying their thoughts and their message.
What a fun conversation. I loved hearing Cheryl talk about how these punctuation mark characters became real to her. If you're a teacher looking for a creative way to bring punctuation to life in your classroom, Punctuation to the Rescue is worth checking out. We'll have a link in the show notes. And in our next episode, we're continuing our conversation with Cheryl. She walks us through her writing process, how her experience has shaped her as a writer. It's a conversation you won't want to miss. Thanks for listening to PoPCast. We'll see you next time.